Hello, everyone. Welcome to the start of a new series, Intro to UI Toolkit. And what you're looking at right now, you may not have been expecting, but if you ever played it, it's the Call of Duty World at War. And what we're going to do is, because usually UI, it's very boring, tutorials kind of just do buttons or main menus. But what we're going to do, showcase UI Toolkit in Unity and some UI programming, is recreating the main menu in Call of Duty World at War. So we'll see different things like this. So we'll just kind of walk through what we're going to create quick, and then we'll kind of break it down. So we have our basic menu. Again, you have some options, you have some different screens, you have your options with all these. And we'll just kind of do a basic intro on how to make something like this. And how we're going to do it is I kind of have a couple rules. So I want this to be kind of engine agnostic, which means not relying on Unity specific stuff really outside UI Toolkit. So we won't be using scriptable objects. We'll be using code, making it in C# as much as possible. And how we're going to do it is we'll base it a bit off of Lyra. If anyone has worked in Unreal Engine before, you'll know Lyra's a bit of a sample game. But I kind of went through how they handle their UI, and we're going to try translate that to Unity. So essentially what that means is we have our main view, and what we're going to do is you see this header and footer. We're going to keep that consistent, but we're going to create our unique views, we'll call them, which is these screens, and each view swaps out. You see the header and footer stay consistent, and the main content is what changes. And then the other thing we're going to have is you'll have your views, which are the screens, and you'll have these pop-ups, or as they're called, modals. And this will be a layer on top of the views where we'll inject different modals. So you'll see some good examples here. When we're creating a new screen, we have the warning, we have our difficulty, see the little things there, I'll try veteran, and then it sets us into the game. So yeah, that's a quick overview of that. Now let's kind of look into it in Unity. Okay, so here now is what it'll kind of look like in Unity. So not one-to-one. I don't want to spend too much time on design. We just have some simple SVG gradients, no shader graph. But we have our header, our shell, our footer, our view, and our modals will pop up. So here's what the menu will kind of look like. So you click in the solo screen, co-op screen will be there. Not done it yet. The video couldn't extract the full video. It's just a sample of Airfield, a kind of overview of the good there. But yeah, how we're going to structure it is first we'll kind of use UI Builder and kind of structure the design. We'll create our templates, and then once that is done and we've created this screen, we're going to kind of get into the programming side of things, how we're going to structure that. So now we kind of looked at World at War, the menu we're trying to recreate. I gave you a quick look of what the first version after the UI Builder will look like of our screen. And now we're kind of just going to do a quick walkthrough on how to kind of look at UI from a programming perspective. So when you see, if you're used to UGUI in Unity, it's kind of just like objects in your scene view, and you can move them around like they're any old game objects. But when you're designing UI in either web dev, .NET applications like WPF or Avalonia, or for this case UI Toolkit, you kind of want to think of everything as a container and what's inside that container. So we're going to kind of highlight all the containers in this UI Toolkit. If you've done web dev before, they'll be like divs, but in UI Toolkit, it's called visual elements. So our task is to recreate this main menu, Call of Duty World at War. And so you'll see the first element you want to create is the big surrounding box. And this is like the parent that everything will be inside, or as you kind of call it, is the root visual element. And inside the root, we have our header, which is another box here with the width is 100%, height maybe 15%. You have your main content area. So this is what we'll be swapping in and out. So the background will be consistent, but the content on top of that swap with each button press. And then you have your footer, which is the bottom area. You'll see now, instead of like 3 visual cubes, we're going to have 3 visual elements. and we'll define their height with classes. So inside this element, you'll see this big block here, and there's some padding. So what we want is this black divider kind of just shows it, but everything is pushed in by the same amount. So let's say it's 10% inwards on the left, and it makes all the elements uniform. So that's another area you'll see. Then we're going to kind of break down the header. So inside our header, you have another container inside of that containing the main menu and the signed in. And those are defined as two more containers. And inside of these, you have the text and you have the text here. So you're already seeing, you're already seeing the shape kind of take place. So every single colored box here is something we're going to define either in code or in UI Builder. Then going down again, in our main container to our left, we have this block, which stores the menu options and the message of the day. And the menu options, like usual, are more containers. So you have the one block here, menu list, and then you have your message of the day. And then on to the right, you have the image. So that's everything we're going to create. So you kind of see now, when you look at a screen, you want to think of it, okay, what containers go inside of where, and how are you going to structure it? So maybe that's like a brief overview if you're new to this. So now we have Unity in our blank scene open, and something you want to do first is, because there are some weird interactions in Unity at the moment, they're kind of in between two packages for input. So you want to scroll down, edit, project settings, go to player, scroll down here, and you want to select active input handling. It might be on new by default, but you want to click it onto both, because I think UI Toolkit still uses the old input for its mouse events. But once you have that done, you want to right click on your canvas and just add a UI document or a UI document with asset if you're in a new scene. And what we're going to do is leave that there, click new, and you'll have a new UXML document here. So what we're just going to call this is we're going to call this layout view, and we're just going to construct the basic layout. And what I like to use for organization is inside of the UI toolkit, we'll have a styles folder, and I have a views folder here. So I'm going to bring it into views. And once our folders are organized, we're going to double click and we're going to open our layout view in the UI Builder. And you'll see here, I have an intro to UI Builder if you've not used it before. We have our viewport up here, our library with assets to drag in is down here. And we want to set our canvas size. So I always use just 1080p as a good default. This is just for preview. It doesn't actually set the size itself, but it's a good default to get a 16:9 resolution. 1080p is a nice size. And there we go, we have our element. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create two style sheets. And a style sheet in USS is the equivalent of CSS if you've ever done web programming, where it contains, your styles and your style classes. So we're going to put that in styles and we're going to call it core. And this is going to be styling that's consistent across every screen in the game. So what does that mean? It means it defines the fonts we're using and it defines the colors we're using. So, all buttons might want the same background color. They'll all want the same font. They'll all want the same hover effects. And you define all of that in these, that instead of having to go into multiple different buttons, prefabs, or button objects, all you do is edit the style sheet and it'll apply the changes to everything in your game. And then, so once you have your core, you don't want to make your core bloated. So we make screen specific styles. So since we're doing our layout, we'll just make a style called, we'll just call it main menu. Since if you're doing a game, you'll have different elements like maybe your HUD, pause menu, where things are styled differently. So our main menu will be consistent here. Will be consistent is like the size of the main container. the size of the header, the footer, button size, etc. So because everything's on the same layout, it'll be consistent, so it'll make a main menu style sheet. And now what do you want to do here? You might be a bit confused as to where to go first. So if I bring back up our photo here, when we were kind of drawing in boxes and containers, you'll remember the first one was this white box. So that's where we then go into Unity. And what you want is a visual element. So the visual element is our container. And by default, it's going to fill in the full thing. And that's fine. And what we're just going to call this is, we'll call this root dash CTR, which is shorthand for container. And this will contain everything in our game. And then we want to kind of bring in the next elements, which are the header, the main area, and the footer. So what are we going to do? We're going to drag 3 more containers out of here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to call it header container. We're going to call it main container. And we're going to call this one footer container. And you'll see now the representation. So we don't have any of the styles yet. We'll do that later. But we have our 3 blocks. And then we're going to go back to our screenshot. So inside of our header, we have this box, which is kind of like the header bar. So what World.war does for the cinematic effect, it has like the cinematic black box off the bottom. So this space is just pure black. The footer is just pure black. But inside of this, anchored at the bottom, is this container with the signed in name and the main menu. So what we want to do then is drag in a container here, represent the bar, and then we want 2 more representing the name. So inside of our header, let's just call this header bar container. And then here, we'll call this menu title container. And we'll call this our username container. So we're just kind of getting the basic space done. And then inside of our main, what did we have? We had a container for on the anchor to the left with our list of options and our message of the day. And then we have a container to our right, which contains the image. So back into the builder, we want to drag in more elements. We'll just call this left container. And we'll call this right container. And in our left container, we have our, we'll call it menu list, and our message of the day, CTR. And then inside our right container, there's only one. It's just the logo container. And the footer we'll leave for now. The actual game footer has like a back button appear here when you navigate screens that you might have saw, and sometimes in games you'll have your menu version, which is like the list of numbers or random code you usually see, and that'll be here. But for now, for simplicity, we're going to keep our header and footer separate. So now going into styling, we want to kind of organize this. So what we'll do is, what I like to do when I'm kind of sketching out is, I don't worry too much about cleanly separating styling, because UI Builder, it will generate the styles for you, but it generates them inline. And what does that mean? Inline means it's only styling the specific element. When you style in the class, you can apply it on many things and you only have to edit in the one place. But when you're editing inline, it's just applied on that single object. But for now, since we're kind of just prototyping and getting our original layout, we won't worry about styles. Just wanted to show you making the 2 classes. So to kind of get everything at color, what we'll do is on our right, inspector and header, we'll give it a background color of black. We'll give our main, we'll just give it a random color of green. just to kind of separate it. Sorry if it hurts your eyes for now, but we'll fix it later. And our footer, we're going to make black as well. And our header bar, which is the thing anchored at the bottom, we'll make that kind of like a bluish color is fine. And then our menu title, we'll make it purple. And our username, we will make it purple. Well, try to get them to right click on background and color. I'm just copy, I'll paste it here. And then inside our main, we have our left container. I'll make that background darker shade of green. And the list, we will make kind of sky blue, I suppose. Message of the day, we'll make a same sky blue. It's all looking very ugly right now, but trust the process for a second, and we'll do the same for the container here. Now all of our containers have sample colors. We want to define their sizes. So if we go back to our preview, how you define sizing is you define everything in percentages. So let's say this footer container, it's roughly, let's just say 35% of the height. So what we're going to do is go into UI Builder and go to our header bar. And where is it here? You'll see size. We'll say max height is 35%. And our header itself, actually, we should do that first. So let's say our headers are roughly 15% each. So our header container max height is 15%. Our footer container max height 15%. Our main container, we can just say height, to be safe, that's 70%. So there we go, kind of getting the sizes grand for now. And then our header bar is right now by default, it anchors to the top of the screen, but we want it to anchor towards the bottom. So what we're going to say is in our header container, you have like your aligning of your items. So you have like row, right now everything's vertical. You want everything to kind of be right to left, although I should do that here actually. But that right to left. With our header container, we want our content at the bottom. So we are going to say justify content, flex end, and that pushes our header bar down here to the bottom. And what we also want to do, that I forgot, which we should do before we start padding stuff out, is do you remember we had our box here, our rectangle? This is our padding. So this is going to make a blank space that pushes everything in. So we're going to go back into Unity, and inside of our parent object here, although actually do it here because the styling remains, kind of exits the header. But you'll see here, have a percentage, and we'll say 10%, for example. And now do you see this pink was pushed in by 10%? And Builder gives you a preview. You can see the green there. And we'll also push it in the right by 10%. So in spacing, this little box here, right, and now that's pushed it in from the left, pushed it in from the right. And now, right now, by default, they both fill out the same length, but they're not actually the full size. You'll see here, like it's only maybe each of them, maybe 30% each. So we're going to go back in Builder, and we'll just say max width, say 40%, and same here, 40%. And here we have our two boxes at 40% each. Now, how do we make it so one is anchored to the left and one is anchored to the right? We do that by going into our header container, and I believe space around, what space between, I think it is. Yes, that's space between. So now it pushes this one to the left, this one to the right, and here is our empty space. So you'll already see now, I know like the actual heights are imperfect at the moment, but we've got our header, we've got our bar, we have our left, and we have our right box. So now that is done, we're going to sort out our main container, and we have our left. So for example, we want this to flex row. So when you have row, it goes left to right, and if you have column, it goes up and down, and then the other options are reverse, so that's down to up or right to left. So now you'll see here, left is like this, and what we want to do is the same thing as before. We want the padding of 10% on both sides. So you'll see now that appearing with the colors, and you want 10%. And now you see evenly up here, it's kind of starting to take shape. So we want to do it by, this is a row. Okay. So you'll see here, they don't both take up the full spot. There's kind of like a gap in between. So let's say we'll make this 55% and we'll make this 30%. Let's just say for now, and kind of do the same as up here. Anchor one at the top, anchor one at the bottom. So for now, we'll just say menu list, we'll just say 55%, and the message of the day is 35%. And the reason I like doing percentages is that everything kind of stays the same size, even though you're when you change the pixel ratio. So when you do pixels, it's kind of fragile. Like if you increase the resolution or lower it, everything comes out of place. When you use percentages, it kind of remains consistent across screens. And we don't want our thing to be wide. So let's say we'll make the max width 40%. And then we want to space between here. And now we have our menu list anchored up here, and our message of the day anchored below, like here. And all we've done is make containers and modify their size and the background color just for display purposes. So you'll see you might be getting the hang of it now. And then our right container, same thing. We'll enforce width, say 40% as well. And we also want here to be space between. And our logo is anchored at the bottom. So let's say it's like a height of 45%, and we want it to be at the bottom. So we select justify content flex end, and you'll see there, we're kind of taking shape now. We have the background, have a color. I'll give it the same color as our left container background. There we go. So you'll see now, if you go back to our image, we have the left block here with 2 colors, the right block here with 1 down there. So we're kind of sorting out the positioning of our menu. And I think that is actually all of the stuff for now. So now we'll just do a couple tweaks so it isn't so much of an eyesore. So one thing, this is where we're not using classes, but you'll kind of see the benefits of classes going forward. So for example, I want to make our header bigger because I feel like it's too squashed at the moment. So what I have to do now, because I don't have a style sheet, is I have to find where I've added it in here. And let's just say I'll eyeball it. I want it to be 20%. Kind of like that. Okay, that's fine. And then our footer, let's just say like 15%. And there we go. And that kind of looks better. Want to make this a bit bigger. Let's just say 40%. And now we're kind of matching the layout a bit. So we'll kind of, as placeholders, we'll try and match up the colors a bit again. So our header and footer are pitch black. The bar container is kind of like a turquoise color. So we'll try match that. And don't worry, we'll go through proper styling later on. And here we can get rid of it. We don't need a background color. Make that fully transparent. Same here. We don't need our background color anymore. Here, no need for a background color. Get rid of that. Say goodbye for background color. Actually, the container itself doesn't need one. So we'll just kind of get rid of all this inline styling right now. I'll just quickly set actually. So if you want to unset, just right click in the inspector and you can click unset. So background, unset. And here we go. So now you can, so you've not lost it. So when you highlight, you can see the hovering. So I think that's enough for the first episode. We kind of just broke down how to look at UIs from, I suppose, a container programming perspective. With Unity, I know some people might be watching this. If you've done HTML or WPF before, you'll see you might be used to doing it in code. But honestly, like I mainly use Avalonia, but I just don't like seeing the UXML code. Because in Writer, like you get a load of errors like this. Like this shows as an error when it's not, and you can't really get rid of that. So like honestly, I don't touch code. I maybe in the future it'll be better, but I prefer just using UI Builder. And then when I want to do code, it's the backend stuff. I mean, let me know what you think. Next episode, we'll kind of flesh out these. We'll kind of look into templates, explain what those are, kind of flesh out the design a bit more. Then once the design is done, we'll move on to the backend. But yeah, thank you for watching. This is the first episode done, and see you in the next one.